everybody, and welcome to a special episode of 3 Points of Light. My co-host for today is the lovely Jennifer's Journey. Say hey, Jennifer.
Hello, everybody.
And me, Mama D. Well, for our usual other co-host, Brian, is down under, sleeping, because it's 2 o'clock in the morning or something like that, close to it. And, I would say, 3:41 a.m. Had to check. And you know how Eric, not Eric, I did that again, didn't I? I always mix up Brian and Eric. Brian's probably snuggled up underneath his covers going, oh God, I don't want to speak to that woman again today. But today, our awesome guest, coming to us from Croatia, by the way. So he is right now 5 hours ahead of us. So it's early evening for him. It's early afternoon for me. But here's a quick little blurb for me. Medicinal marijuana, whichever way you want to put it, is something that I'm a very good proponent of. I agree that it should be used. It should be legalized. That everybody should have access to it because it does so much good. Okay? And Rick has shared his knowledge in 2 books, and he's going to share his knowledge, and trust me, he pulls no punches. He says what he means, and he means what he says. And this is our guest, Rick Simpson. Say hey, Rick.
Nice to be with you, Darlene.
Oh, I'm so glad to have you here. Thank you very much for answering. Actually, it was Daniela who answered my email and not thinking, oh, there's a crazy woman who wants to talk to you. I am crazy, but you said yes anyway, so there you go.
We're all a little bit crazy, dear.
It's
Nothing
Canadian
wrong with
thing.
that. Nothing wrong with that.
It's a Canadian thing.
Yeah, it's a Canadian thing.
We right now, the Canadians outnumber everybody in the chat room. Hey.
Oh, good.
Yay. Okay. All right. Tell everybody a little bit about, first off, Rick Simpson, the man. You are a Canadian, or I don't know how that goes, but you were born and raised in Canada?
Yes, I was born in Nova Scotia. I come from a region just outside the town of Spring Hill. And for many years, I worked at the local hospital in Spring Hill. And in 1997, I received a severe head injury at work, and it left me with a condition called post-concussion syndrome. And it caused my head to ring. You know, the concussion caused my head to ring 24 hours a day. I went through the medical system. I took their drugs and their pills and things of that nature for 5 years. It did nothing but make me worse. Okay. But about a year after I was injured, I became aware of the fact that just smoking cannabis actually did more for me than anything that the medical system was supplying. But it still didn't give me the sleep I needed, you know, with the loud noise all the time. And of course, that drove my blood pressure crazy. And I just couldn't sleep. So I was like this for about 5 years.
How old were you when you had the head injury?
Well, that was in 1997. I would have just turned 58.
So still young.
No, excuse me. 1997, 48.
Okay.
But, I found out that, that actually smoking cannabis did more good than the medicines the doctors were providing. But it still didn't do, the job that I needed. It still didn't give me the rest and sleep I required. So in 1999, I got thinking, I said, well, if the smoking the cannabis, actually does give me a bit of relief, what would happen if I produced the essential oil from that plant and ingested it? So, I made the extract, but after talking to my doctor, I was somewhat fearful to use it because, they all kept saying it's bad for you. It's still under study. It's bad for the lungs. Although I wasn't going to smoke this, I was going to ingest it. But it was about 3 years later that I was in late 2001. I was in my doctor's office, and he just simply told me there's nothing more we can do for you. You're on your own. We've tried all our medications, so, you have to find your own solutions. So I went home and I had this extract, it'd been sitting there for almost 3 years. So I started taking small doses and about an hour before bed. And then within about a month, I got the dosage up to about 1/3 of a gram I would take a third of a gram of this, very potent extract about an hour before bed. And it was knocking me out. It gave me the sleep and rest I required. And you see, when I was done with the medical system, or when they turned me loose, the pills and the chemicals they had fed me for all those years, they had affected my mind so badly that I could hardly even remember my own name. But in a very short time, my thinking processes cleared up. The arthritis in my knees disappeared. This extract controlled my blood pressure, and I started losing weight because I was detoxifying. And I didn't really know what was going on at the time because I had no medical knowledge of this plant really. But friends and neighbors, they all seen, a vast improvement in me. And then about a year later, in late 2002, I went back to the doctor's office because I had these three lesions on my body. I had one on the side of my nose, close to my right eye. And I had one on my left cheek, and I had one on my chest. And I'd had these since the 1990s, and they wouldn't heal. So I strongly suspected they were skin cancer. So I went to the doctor, and he looked at them, and of course they were concerned about the one close to the eye. That's the one they felt, presented the most danger. So I went in, and they operated on that. And it was about a week after the operation, I was looking at where they had operated, and it was, it was infected a bit, which is quite common in hospitals today. And it was right at that very moment that a report I had heard almost 30 years before on our local radio station. This announcer this is about 1975, and I was leaving the hospital one day, and I just turned the radio on. And all of a sudden, this announcer comes on, he's laughing like an idiot, but he said, this report just in. A study in the U.S. has found that THC, the active ingredient in marijuana, had been found to kill cancer cells. So, I really hadn't paid much attention to the report because they did it in such a frivolous way, laughing about it. It seems like every time the word marijuana is mentioned, somebody's got to make a joke out of it.
Yeah.
And that's another thing. I wish the world would stop calling this stuff marijuana. This is the cannabis hemp plant we're talking about here. Marijuana is nothing but a slang term. So I would encourage everyone to stop using that dumb word. But, after the operation, and everything, I was looking and I thought, well, what would happen if I put, that extract on the other two cancers, on the one on my cheek and the one on my chest? And I hate to say it, but I almost didn't do it because I honestly thought, that the Canadian government, if there was a cure or an effective treatment for cancer, I thought that surely to God, the American or Canadian government, all governments would be using it. I couldn't get my head around the fact that our world is so corrupted. But I put the extract on the other two areas. I just put just a little drop on each one. I put a bandage on. Within 4 days, I removed them. Both areas completely healed. So I started telling my friends and neighbors, that I thought the cannabis extracts had cured my cancer. And of course, everybody.
The same extract that you were taking internally, you just put on the lesions. Okay.
Directly on the lesions. But everybody just laughed at me. And then about 7 weeks after they had operated, the one that was close to my right eye, it came roaring right back. And I watched it develop for 3 or 4 days, the same puffed up and bleeding, felt like splinters in the face because that's what happens when you have basal cell carcinoma. So I put the extract on that, and 4 days later, it was completely healed. Now, that was in February of 2003. So I think I have every right to say that cannabis cured my cancer.
Yeah, I have to agree.
What happened here?
I don't know. We still see you and still hear you. You
can still see me.
Yep.
The screen just went black here. Okay. I guess that's all right. Anyway, I healed these areas all up, the other two areas, and the one they had operated on were all completely healed. So I went to my doctor's office to get a copy of my pathology report. And it stated right there that I was suffering with basal cell carcinoma. So I told the doctor's receptionist, who happened to be his wife, I said, I'd like to come back in the evening and talk to the doctor about something I'm working on. And she said, well, what's this about? And I said, well, that cancer that they had surgically removed, it came right back. So I used hemp oil. and, to treat these areas, and it healed it completely.
Yeah.
And the minute I said hemp oil, the woman just went rigid, and she started literally screaming at me, because there was 5 or 6 other patients right there in the waiting room, right beside me. And this woman was going, the doctor will not go there. The doctor will not prescribe this. And I thought these people were crazy. So I got out and I got in my vehicle and I was on the way home and I got thinking about it and I said, well, if I was a small town doctor and one of my patients had cured himself of cancer with a plant extract, I think I'd want to know about it.
Yeah.
So the whole thing had a bad smell about it. So after that, I started supplying it to many people I knew who had skin problems, skin conditions, psoriasis, skin cancers, that thing, that type of thing.
Okay.
And then a short time later, I started supplying it to treat internal cancers. Because I thought, well, if it cures cancer on the outside, what does it do on the inside?
Yeah.
So, and what I witnessed was truly astounding. People were coming to me with stage 4 terminal cancer after they had been through the medical system. And these extracts were turning them around. And it was doing it very well. Usually within 3 months, they were cancer free. So I went to every political party in Canada. I went to 2 federal ministers of health. I went to Dr. David Suzuki, the Canadian Cancer Society. I went to the United Nations. I went to everybody you can imagine. Nobody would lift a finger. And that's when I clued in about how corrupted our world really is.
Well, Nell in the chat room says most doctors have an investment in the medicine. Try that one again. In the the drug companies. There's always some sort of connection. Like I know that from seeing, you don't have to even work in the doctor's offices. You know that the drug companies, they send reps to the doctors and they get to share their free products and the whatnot and what have you. So yeah, that would make sense.
Well, it's truly a horror story what they're doing here. I mean, this whole thing is nothing but a sham. I mean, we've used cannabis for thousands of years, and not just in medicine. We used it in so many different ways. It's amazing, And cannabis never presented a danger to anyone.
Nope.
It's known all through history that it's non-addictive and harmless.
Yeah.
But the problem was cannabis presented a danger to the pharmaceutical industry, the energy providers, the chemical companies, the cotton industry, all these big industries. They're all against cannabis. So they went and they had, our governments are corrupted anyway, and we all know it. So they went and they had people, government officials under their control, outlaw the use of this plant altogether. And that is something they never had the right to do. Now in Canada, the Canadian government outlawed actually what was well known to be at that time the most medicinal plant on earth. They did this in 1923. So since that time, when you take the most medicinal plant on earth out of medicine, you're committing genocide. And that's just what the Canadian government had been doing for all of these years since that time. And the same goes for the U.S. and many other countries all over the world. This is all based in corruption.
Is there any country that you know of that allows the growth of cannabis? It's like it can grow. It grows wild in the fields or whatever the case may be. I'm not talking like a farm type of thing, but I'm saying
North Korea and Bangladesh.
Right. When it's in the U.S., when they're growing in the U.S., it's all government controlled. Okay. Everything's government controlled.
Yeah, but the government doesn't have the right to control this.
No, they do not.
We all have a God-given natural right to use these healing plants. It says this right in the Bible, for God's sakes. But these governments step in and see what they're so afraid of right now. Because once the truth really comes out about this, these governments are all guilty as sin. They killed hundreds of millions of people with these stupid laws.
Exactly.
They're guilty of sin, and they should, these people should all be taken out of power because they're not doing what's right for the citizens of this planet. And, the proof is just overwhelming. The medical history of this plant, my God, it defies description. So, what's going on here, I consider this to be the greatest crime against humanity that was ever committed. And I think it's just about high time that it come to an end. And I really don't know what's wrong with the people in North America. Why don't you, get off your asses and stand up to your damn governments and tell them you've had enough of their nonsense? People are suffering and dying everywhere. It could be helped, and could be helped, with a non-addictive. There's no danger here. This is the perfect medicine. It follows the Hippocratic Oath. And if you read that oath, it states first do no harm, and it also states that as a physician, I shall not administer poison. That's the real Hippocratic Oath. But of course, doctors today don't use that oath. They've changed it now, so they can use poisons. This is insanity beyond belief. And when I look at, especially fields of medicine like oncology, look at the dismal success rate they have. Or if you could even call it a success rate. These doctors, these oncologists sit there and they want, out of every 100 patients they treat, within 5 years, 99% of them are dead. I think, if I was a doctor, I would clue in that what I'm doing is not helping these people. And the sad reality, truly is, as I understand it, about 90% of oncologists, if they were to be diagnosed with cancer themselves, they will not use their own treatments. But they'll give them to us because they make a lot of money in those deals.
Actually, I did. I had cancer, and I had 3 young kids, and I did have to go through, serious radiation treatments 5 days a week, just like a job. But I was very honest. I knew every Friday I had to take a blood test, and I knew what they were going to find in my blood test. And I was very honest. And I was shocked because my oncologist and the doctors at the hospital treating me every day, 5 days a week, they agreed with me. I told them, on the way home, I take the back roads. When I get home, I'm able to stay awake with my young children. I'm able to eat, and I am going to survive this. And I did. I don't use medication. I use the plant.
Well, you're one of the lucky ones, dear, because, when you look at chemo and radiation, they're both carcinogenic treatments. And these treatments have killed countless individuals. This is not medicine. Since when is drinking poison or having poison shot into your veins or being irradiated? How could anybody in their right mind consider this as medicine? And it really makes me mad today because they talk about, cannabis or, these plant extracts. That's old fashioned. That's not conventional medicine. Well, what the hell is conventional about poisoning people? The empiric method of healing is real medicine, and it is conventional medicine. What we have today is all based on greed and profits. Nobody's getting healed from these people. And if you see, you go to a doctor today, well, they'll give you a prescription. All right. You go home, you have a side effect from that. Then they give you another pill to fight the side effect. They want you to keep coming back. It's all about return business. So they have the minute money comes into play when it comes to medicine, healing goes out the window. And that's exactly what's happened here.
Exactly. I've been very fortunate. I am on disability now. I've got a lot of different ailments, but like I said, the medicine thing, I had an injury in 94, 95. That's what they did. They played guinea pig with me, and the pharmacist was like, you are going to wind up with an ulcer. And of course I did from all that medication. But I've been very fortunate. I have found a doctor, and I finally decided I was going to be very open with her, and the nurse practitioner came in. Of course, she's got to, give you the riot act, and I did tell her, I want to talk to the doctor. This is going to be a lengthy visit. And at the end of my concerns was, I want to know what she feels about the medical marijuana, because I'm sure she's finding that in my blood test. And the practitioner was floored. She's like, oh, she's going to give it to you. All right. And I'm like, uh-oh. So, all my concerns, and I told her, and of course the nurse practitioner's like, well, you didn't mention the marijuana. So I was like, okay, I got this. And she was so upset that my doctor agreed with me. She says, she doesn't have the license to prescribe it, but she says, I want to be included. I want to know everything that's going on. I will help you along. I'll give you recommendations. But she has felt that, it does help. I know many people that use the oils for their seizures. Success rate. I agree. I don't know why it's not made available, and why it's not legal everywhere.
Well, the problem today is, I mean, there's so many people that are using my name. You know, they're all producing extracts, and they're all saying it's made by Rick Simpson's recipe, or they'll say that I'm directly involved with them. This is all, again, nothing but a pack of lies. And people are being scammed every day. I mean, they're sending thousands of dollars to these idiots, and what they're receiving back is nothing but trash. It's not properly produced medicinal extracts. You know, and then I get all the emails complaining, well, you know, I bought your oil. Well, you bought my oil. There's your problem right there. You know, what I did, I tried to show the world how everyone can produce this themselves. And this is what I wanted people to do. Because there's no way in God's green earth that I could supply everybody that needed this medication. I mean, that's just common sense. But, you know, all these criminals, they leap, you know, at the opportunity to use my name. And these people have made a lot of money. And, you know, I mean, what they're trying to do, too, I mean, the governments aren't putting a stop to this scam because the governments want to see the cannabis or the extracts discredited. And another thing today, you see all of this attention being paid to CBD. Now, I don't have a problem with CBD. I mean, it's medicinal. It has its own medicinal values. But, you know, when you look back at all the research that was done by Rafael Michelin, Guzman in Spain, Seth Group in the U.S., and several others, what were they researching? Could it be THC? THC is the real cancer killer, for God's sakes. And even the American Cancer Institute itself, right on their own web pages, openly state that THC is effective in the treatment of several different forms of cancer.
Yes.
But what alarms me today is so many cancer patients are running around looking for CBD extracts. You know,
CBD extracts. What is exactly CBD extracts for those who don't know what it is?
Well, CBD does have its, like I said, medicinal values. It's just one of the cannabinoids. Last count, there's 144 different cannabinoids in this plant, like THC, CBD, CBN, CBG. It just goes on and on and on.
Okay.
But, I mean, it's certainly a useful cannabinoid. And, you know, like people with seizures and things of that nature, it can be quite beneficial. But, I've always stated that to get the true healing effect, you know, of this medication, it should be made properly. And you would be looking at, percentages of THC up in the vicinity of 80 to 90% THC. And then the rest of them are, you know, maybe 2 or 3% or 4% CBD. And then you have CBG, CBN. And some of these cannabinoids are only there in trace amounts. But these are the medications that have, you know, given this medicine the recognition, you know, it's finally getting. So, you know, it's the healing power of these strong extracts. You know, and then all these people, well, you know, I don't want to get high. Well, getting high never killed anybody.
Nope.
You know, I mean, this is ridiculous. I don't know why people are so afraid of it. I mean, I do have a problem with people using sativa extracts for internal uses because a medicine or an extract produced from a sativa can be very, very energizing. In other words, and it can make the patient literally bounce off the walls.
Okay.
But when you produce the extract by my methods, using the indica strains, you know, heavy sedative, sleepy indica strains. And, you know, what happens then, people just take a dose of that oil, and usually within about an hour, they get this kind of a smile on their face, and 5 minutes later, they're sleeping. And this is, you know, sleep and rest are part of the healing process. I mean, yes, that encourages it. So, I just wish people would lose their fear, you know, of cannabis because, you know, everything our government's ever told us, you know, was based on nothing but a pack of lies. And I think it's just about time that everybody on this planet unites and gets together and tell their governments point blank, you know, we've had enough of your corruption. You know, these lies and deceptions cannot stand. It's time to turn this damn plant free. And the only way to do that is not by legalization or decriminalization, because that comes with, those words come with a lot of, restrictions and regulations. What these governments must do, they must get up and they must openly repeal these laws because they're based in corruption anyway and they belong in a trash can because these governments never had the right to outlaw this plant in the first place and they know it. So I think it's just about time this is outright murder that they're doing right now. Mm-hmm. I think it's just about time to bring it to an end.
Yeah, because there's a lot of people dying from cancer. Nell in our chat room, very awesome lady, her husband passed from a form of cancer. And if she had been able to used this, if her and Roger had been able to use this, it might have made one heck of a difference. Eric, who was in our chat room, who had to leave, he also had cancer. His was in the lungs. And again, that would have made a difference as well. My question is how did you first discover how to make the extract?
I'm sorry, can you excuse me for just a minute? I'll be right back.
Sure. Go ahead, sweetie.
Okay, I'll be right back.
Okay. I will definitely ask that question. So if anybody has questions in the chat room, so it's quite a chat room for today, but it's a Saturday afternoon. I'm sure people will come along eventually, and if they don't, they'll catch it in the archives. But if anybody has a question in the chat room, put it into the chat room, or put your hand up, and we'll, I'll have you, I'll unlock your microphone. I'm locking everybody today. Jennifer, you still around?
Yes, I am.
Okay, she's self-muted.
Happy.
Happy. Okay. If you have any questions, pop them in. Come on, turn them up.
Like you said, this is something that everybody does need to know about. And like I was telling you, I started sharing it on my page, and now everybody is sharing things and being more open about it. But it was the fear of what everybody else would think or say, or who would see it. But I've noticed that every day I go on and everybody's pushing it and sharing things and asking questions and getting involved in the discussions. And, but I feel it should, I don't know where I would be without what I do.
I think one of the main things,
in a lot of pain and not wanting to do anything.
Yeah, I think one of the main things that that Rick said, and I agree, it does. When people use the word marijuana, it's like it makes everybody giggle. But to use the cannabis or the hemp plant, I think that's like that is the begin for me. I think that's the beginning, because if you sit there and like I'm a mother of 3, and if people go, "You're taking what? You're taking marijuana?" Well, no, I'm not taking it's cannabis oil. This is the difference. So it'll make a difference to people. They'll sit there and go, but it's not, it's the same thing, but it's not the same thing. So,
yes.
Much agreed.
Well, you'd asked me about how I discovered this, but I've never tried to take credit for discovering the cure for cancer. I mean, I heard that broadcast from the 1970s. That's where I got the information. And then I used it, on myself and healed my own cancers. And I think the only thing that could be said about me is that I guess it is true that I am the one who has focused the world's attention on the healing powers of this plant.
Agreed.
But I don't claim to have found the cure.
No, what I wanted to know is, how did you discover how to make the extract?
Oh, well, I started growing cannabis myself in around 1988. And about 5 or 6 years later, I decided I was going to I wanted to produce some hashish, and I wanted to find out how to produce these extracts. Because I'd heard about, hemp oil or honey oil, all these terms they use. Excuse me. So I had this book called Cannabis Alchemy, and I followed the instructions in the book, but it didn't really make a lot of sense to me. I mean, I'm a power engineer by trade. And, I did a lot of maintenance work around the hospitals on distilling equipment and all kinds of different equipment. So what they were saying didn't really make any sense, but I followed their instructions and I produced an extract, if that's what you want to call it, but it had no potency or medical qualities at all. So I just, put that on the back burner, and it was back in 1999 when I actually produced the first extracts myself, and from my experience around, distilling and all kinds of other things like that, I've come up with my own method, how to produce this extract.
Okay.
So I just sat down and made it the way that I thought it should be made, and it came out perfect the first time. Because really all you're doing, anybody that smokes cannabis knows if you have a cannabis bud and there is no resins on it, no crystal. I mean, normally you can see like the little white specks, and you'll see it all over the bud material. And if you don't have that, chances are that bud is worthless. So, and it's in these resins. That's where the medicine is. So all I decided to do was to use a solvent to wash the resins off the plant, then filter the oil solvent mix, and then boil the solvent off. And it leaves you with this, well, what can only be described as a miracle drug. And, I can't believe that we've had this plant for thousands of years, and nobody has ever, actually sit down and used it properly. It's truly disgusting.
Okay, so I'm very basic in my knowledge of cannabis and hemp. So
I'm trying to teach her. I am trying to teach her.
Look, I made a mistake, and I put on Facebook yesterday. I said, I'm looking for some green. And certain people mentioned, don't be putting that on Facebook. Just message me, and I'll get you some. And I was like, what the heck? It took me a few minutes. What the heck are they talking about? So I was like, I need green. It's St. Patty's Day. I need somebody gave me a green shit. My goodness, great people just, but it was funny. I know that it does a lot of good. Okay. One of the things you explained to me is when people smoke it, right, and they cough, it's an expectorant.
Yes.
So it helps you get all the ick,
yes,
out of your lungs, So, I mean, example, Eric, he ended up with lung cancer. So that may have been something that would have, not that he would have, I don't know. But, that might have been something that he could have used as well that would have helped. We don't know. But until you try it, you never know.
These extracts have an astounding success rate. I mean, not just with cancer, but with everything. I mean, we're treating AIDS, multiple sclerosis, arthritis, chronic pain. The list is just endless.
Yeah.
And,
Nell in the chat room has fibromyalgia. Yeah. And she lives with pain every day, and cannabis helps her so much, Well,
it would help her even more if the governments would get the hell out of the way and let us do the simple research that's required.
Yeah.
Then we could start supplying extracts to the public that actually do work, the best to heal their conditions. But you see, they've always prevented the research from being done. And what people don't seem to understand is the medical qualities from strain to strain can vary a great deal. Practically all the heavy sedative indica strains are very effective in the treatment of cancer. Okay. But, some strains are better for pain relief than others. Some are better for lowering ocular pressure for glaucoma patients.
Yes.
Or taking care of chronic pain. It just varies, so much. So what I used to do, you see, I was growing many different varieties of these heavy sedative indica strains. So I used to produce the extracts from all of these different strains. And I was passing these extracts out, and I was having good results. But one day I was sitting there, and I think it was about 6 different types of extract. Mm-hmm. And I thought, well, what would happen if you just, dump them all into the same pot? Mix them together. So that's what I did. And I started passing these extracts out, and these extracts were working on everything. I mean, people were coming with diabetes, and they had terminal cancer, maybe arthritis, and God knows what else. Mm-hmm. Within 3 months, most of these people no longer required insulin. Their cancers were gone, or whatever other medical problems they had just disappeared. So, I mean, what else? History calls cannabis a panacea, which means cure-all. And when you mix the extracts from many different good varieties and good medicinal varieties, that's exactly what you've got. You've got a cure-all.
Okay. So if, now, I know you're not, you are, but you aren't. You're saying that people should grow their own, because this way you know what it is, what's on it, what's in it. So if somebody wanted to, example, I decide, tomorrow I want to start growing it so I can make my own because I need it.
Right.
Where do people get the seed to start?
That's
Jennifer.
Just go on the internet, dear. There's all kinds of seed companies. Greenhouse, Sensi, Dutch Passion, DNA Seeds. There's all kinds of different seed companies.
Okay. Exactly. It's funny you brought that up, because I was just going to say, now, we do have the dispensaries here now in, the U.S. We do have the dispensaries here, but when you buy, you will never find a seed. And that's because they don't want you to have the seed.
No, of course they don't.
So technically it's legal to buy the seed, but it's illegal to buy the weed. The actual smoking.
In Canada, you've always been allowed to buy seeds in Canada.
Okay.
Because they don't contain enough THC or the other cannabinoids to keep them illegal. So you can buy the seeds, but you're not allowed to grow them.
Right.
Canada.
And here you can go to the dispensaries, but you have to have from a certified doctor to be able to go get these things. Mm-hmm. But they do have the dispensaries open, but boy, was it a fight. And where he was saying in the 70s, I was telling Darlene that, back in the 70s, I do know somebody that was getting from the government as a study. I was shocked. I didn't think, I was like, I was young then. This person was much older. But once that study was over, they quit supplying it to them. And she, couldn't get it anymore. Not legally, but
the government
she started going downhill.
I mean, the governments have known for decades what this does. There's no question. And all the experts in this field I heard, about the medical school in Virginia study right on my local radio station, for God's sakes, a little station that doesn't have a radius of more than 50 miles. So all the top experts that were working in the field of cannabis, they had to know about this study. But the problem was in those days, there was no internet to get the information out. And if you were an expert and you opened your mouth and went against the government, guess what? That's the end of your career.
Exactly.
So all these experts sat there and kept their mouths shut until I came along. And with me, you see, in my case, they couldn't do a damn thing to me because I was already, my working career was over thanks to the head injury. My kids are all grown up, so they couldn't threaten me with taking my kids. As a matter of fact, I wish they would. But see, there was no way they could come.
My children hear this. There you go.
There was no way the government could really come at me other than through their stupid legal system. Mm-hmm. I had so much evidence, it was just overwhelming. But everybody just kept ignoring it. And even when I went through the legal system in Canada, they tried to make it sound as if that I didn't go to the right places. Well, I would like the Prime Minister of Canada, Mr. Trudeau, to tell me what is the right place. There's a fool that got elected because he promised to legalize cannabis. What has he done? He's just playing games with the public. They want to control it, and they want to make as much money off it as they possibly can. Now tell me, if you yourself are sick or you have a loved one that's sick and dying, who has the right to stand in front of you and tell you that you cannot grow a God-given plant to heal them? I'd like to meet that man.
Yeah, because it's what it is. It's a plant.
Yes.
It's in its natural form. It's not like all these other drugs, okay? Because people are going to go, it's a drug. It's not the crack and then the ice and the cocaine and all that other stuff that it's.
Well, they use that, it's a gateway drug. You know something? They're absolutely right. Cannabis is a gateway drug. But it doesn't lead you to the use of heavy drugs. It leads you away from the use of them.
Yeah.
That's your gateway effect.
Amen.
Mm-hmm. Again, more lies from our governments. But, like I said, none of these governments have the right to control this, and none of them have the right to send the legal system after you if you want to grow it and produce your own medicine. That is your natural right as a human being. And it's just about damn time our governments realized it.
I think if people actually listened and not just, you can hear all kinds of stuff, but when you listen and you're sharing your knowledge that you're sharing, people need to listen to. Okay. Because like I said, I know very little. I know that I do support the use of medicinal cannabis. There we go. I'm going to get the words right. The use of medicinal cannabis. And I know that, I have had friends who have used it, and it helps them when they were going through the chemo and whatever. It helped them to alleviate the side effects of it. But I didn't know that it was also helping them in other ways, and which is what I'm learning now. And I think it's an awesome thing that, first off, that you're sharing your knowledge. You're not, because there's so many people out there who are keeping it quiet and going, okay, well, like you said, they can't. You want to take your kids, but they won't. They can't take your job. They can't, they couldn't do that, so they couldn't stop you from saying the truth. And you're not You're not making money off of this.
No.
This interview here that we're doing is there's nobody getting paid for it, from it, whatever. I think the most that you might get paid is if somebody buys your book, which I understand it's in like a bajillion different languages, and it teaches people how to do their own work. It makes you do your own research because you actually have to read it, and then you have to go out and do the work. So it's not like you're a drug dealer. You know, people go, oh, he's a drug dealer because he's giving it away. He's not.
Well, like you said, in Run from the Cure, I mean, Christian Lorette, he shot the documentary for me. And I remember one time we were driving in the truck there, and I just told him, I said, you know, because people say, you know, Rick Simpson's a drug dealer. And I said, well, I'd have to be the stupidest drug dealer in history now, wouldn't I? Because I was giving this away. I wasn't charging people. You know, right. But you know, people, they have this conception, you know, that pharmaceuticals are safe. You know, over 80% of people that are dying from drug overdoses, they're dying from pharmaceuticals. You know, so the whole thing here, you cannot look at cannabis the same as you would look at the opiates, which are heavily addictive, and especially these substances they produce from opium, you know, like hydromorphine and OxyContin, things of that nature. These substances are very addictive and they're very, very deadly. But cannabis doesn't have that danger. There's no addiction. They're not deadly. Nobody in history has ever died from the use of cannabis. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I just don't understand why people, I mean, we're brainwashed. We've been fed all of this propaganda and all these lies, you know, and the big money that actually controls the government. I mean, you know, they can go in today. I mean, scientists are basically no different than most other humans. You give them enough money and they'll tell you anything you want to hear. And most of these studies that were done, they were all based in corruption. It was just a pack of lies. And then they all went along with it and they all filled their pockets and we all died.
Very true. The hemp plant. Now, aside from people smoking it and getting the medicinal effects that it has, it's also, which I find it totally weird that they've outlawed the plant. Okay, because it's but like you said, it's the cotton industry. It's great as in hemp, hemp material. It makes, you know, it has a lot more than just one use.
Oh, it's
but what we're talking about here is this use is for the medicinal effect of it. But yeah, people want to do that research on it. That the hemp plant has a lot of interesting uses, a lot of awesome uses that people are missing out on because it affects other bigger industries.
Well, we should be living in a hemp-based economy. This is what we actually, if this world was run properly, we would be living in a hemp-based economy. Because, you know, I mean, today, over 50,000 different things can be produced from durable, long-lasting cannabis. I mean, practically everything we use, our furniture, our homes, you know, hempcrete, all of these different uses. And, you know, and then when it comes to fuel and things of that nature, I mean, you get all of this nonsense, you know, Al Gore and his inconvenient truth. You know, oh, the CO2 is rising. Well, Al Gore, I mean, pretty sad case if you can call that a politician, more like a gangster. I mean, CO2 actually makes up less than 1% of greenhouse gases. Okay. And we are increasing that level because we are burning fossil fuels that contain CO2, which has been buried for thousands or millions of years. But when you grow the cannabis plant, it takes in CO2 and it gives off fresh air. At the end of the cycle, when you've taken the medicine, the seeds, and whatever else you want to take from that plant, you take what's left and you produce the fuel from it. Now, I'm just going to speak about ethanol here. With the new enzyme processes they have out there today, 1 little acre, now that's not a very big piece of land. Off of 1 acre, you can produce as much as 1,800 gallons of ethanol. Now that's enough to heat your home, run your car, and have a few hundred gallons left to sell if that's what you wish to do. You know, this whole thing, there is no energy crisis. The only crisis is that we're not growing cannabis to fulfill our energy needs. You know, this plant could put an end to starvation. It could put people back on the land. It could basically bring an end to unemployment. It could give us all jobs. But, that's not what the big money wants. They want to poison the planet. And this is what they've done. Over the last few years, and you look at the rates of these diseases and how much higher they are now. This is all being caused from all the toxins we're exposed to. We're living in a poisoned environment, and our own bodies, it's affecting our immune systems. And our own bodies, we actually produce natural cannabinoids in our own bodies. But when our immune systems become compromised, then that opens the door wide open for cancer and all these other diseases to rear their ugly head. But luckily for us, the cannabinoids these extracts contain, they fit right into the same receptors that our own natural cannabinoids fit into. And luckily for the human race, and as a matter of fact, all animal life, we're all endowed with the endocannabinoid system. The endocannabinoid system actually brings balance to our whole bodies. And it works with our immune system. Basically what it does, it puts your immune system in overdrive. You go to take chemo. As far as I'm concerned, anybody that takes chemo or radiation, you would have to be a total idiot. I mean, when you look at these treatments, they kill your immune system. Your hair falls out. How the hell could that be good for you?
Yes, I was very young, and like I said, I was too young, and I didn't know. I just did what they told me I had to do. But yes, it affected my teeth. It affected my bones. My hair I could feel my hair coming out. I mean, and so I suffer, from other things from that radiation. If I would have known then what I know now, I would have said no. Let's see what else I can do.
Well, I mean, that's the only sensible thing to do, but they've got this ingrained so deeply. I mean, even after I became well known, I remember like the first trip I made to Europe, I did a speaking tour with Dr. Lemire Hanoush. Now, Dr. Hanoush works directly with Raphael Mechoulam right there at Hebrew University in Jerusalem. And Mechoulam was the guy that discovered THC. So this man knows what he's talking about. He's a world-renowned expert in this field. Dr. Hanoush and I, we did a speaking event in Olamos at one of the oldest medical schools in Europe. Now, Dr. Hanoush, he did his lecture, and then I got up and did mine. And when I come down off of that stage, this young medical student walked up to me and she said, "You're calling doctors murderers." And I said, "Well, if I give somebody enough poison to kill them," I said, "what would you call me?" And I said, "Do you actually think it makes some kind of difference because you're wearing a white coat?" Oh, then, this was a young woman and she got mad. And up come the finger, the medical faculty of this university want you back here on the 26th of this month, and they're going to set you straight. And I looked at her and I said, "Listen, little girl, you get every damn doctor in the Czech Republic here on the 26th, and we'll see who gets set straight." Well, the people that had paid to have, to put on this tour, they get all excited. The university is going to take you on. And of course, then the mainstream media would have to cover it. And I just laughed at them. I told him, I said, "Nobody's going to take me on." And he said, "Well, they just said that they want you back there on the 26th. I said, "Look, I'm the only one telling the truth. They have nothing to take me on with." 3 days later, that same university called up and canceled. The excuse they used, they said the medical students had no interest in this subject. Now, can you imagine that? Medical students don't want to know how to cure cancer?
Exactly. No.
It's pathetic. But luckily, there are countries. When I came to what was the former Yugoslavia, and Croatia was part of that, when I came here, they put me on the mainstream media. And that's something that no other country would do. And that really helped to open the doors, here in the Balkans and many other countries as well. And I've done lectures with the top experts in the world in several different countries here in Europe. There's no holding this back now. But this medicine has to be brought to the public in the proper way. And if we leave this in our government's hands, that's never going to happen.
So is there some way, okay, I'm going to go into a subject that I rarely go into, a political thingamajiggy. Is there some way that we as regular everyday citizens can get our governments to focus on removing that law, repealing the law that outlaws the growing of cannabis? Because,
Well,
like you said,
it's the only right thing for them to do. I mean, they
because
never had the right
making it,
to tell God.
legalizing it is,
Yeah, they
legalizing
never
it
had.
again still holds us to their standards. If they
Right.
repeal the law that we can grow it free, like I said, free range turkeys, free range cannabis, will there be idiots who will abuse it? Yes, because there's idiots in everything. Okay, but there will be people who will be allowed to live because of being able to do this. So is there something? I mean, aside from writing your congressman or your whatever the politician is, your mayor or whatever, writing them and speaking about it, can you suggest anything else because like right now you have Canadians and Americans on. We will have people from the UK and everywhere else listening in the archives. So something that we can all sort of say, like aside from growing it in my backyard and having my SQ neighbors going, hey, what the heck, which I have no problem with really, but, is there something that we can do to sort of
Well,
open
but
people's eyes?
the bottom line is, I think everybody should just go out and start growing it.
Okay.
Damn these stupid legal consequences. I mean, this don't even make sense anymore.
Okay.
This whole thing is so jaded. And like I said, who has the right to tell you you can't use a plant to heal yourself, especially when it's non-addictive and harmless? I mean, this is, cannabis, what people have to get it in their heads, cannabis was a farm crop, no different than corn. We grew it for thousands of years. People in the U.S., farmers in the U.S. used to pay their taxes with it. Some forms of cannabis they grew would be considered industrial cannabis today because they had very low cannabinoid levels. But
Okay.
at the same time, many farmers were growing what is now called marijuana. So, I mean, those farmers back, especially in the U.S., when they brought in the Tax Act in 1937, I mean, those farmers that had grown cannabis for hundreds of years must have thought the government had gone off their rocker. No, it's not cannabis anymore. It's marijuana, and it's a deadly, addictive, and dangerous drug, says Harry Anslinger. And I mean, it was Anslinger himself that went to the United Nations in 1954 and had the United Nations declare cannabis to be a non-medicinal plant. Now, suddenly, the most medicinal plant is non-medicinal. Then in 1961, the UN put their single convention treaty in place, which basically prohibited all member countries from allowing the growing and use of cannabis. Now, I mean, the United Nations is corrupted right to the core. They're run by the big money, too. I mean, the Rockefellers donated, 18 acres of very expensive land right in the heart of New York City. They donated the land for the United Nations building, or their headquarters. Who does the public think is running the show here? It's the big money, the Rothschilds, Rockefellers, Warburgs, people like that. They're the ones that control our earth, and they are nothing but psychopaths. And so they go out, at least 50% of the population has psychopathic tendencies. There's no question. I mean, you get the real psychopaths like the Rothschilds and people like that. These people are total psychopaths. But they get people with psychopathic tendencies in governments to go along with their policies. Mm-hmm. And then the government controls the medical system, the legal system, the educational systems. And then they feed us all this propaganda and lies about cannabis, which it's all based on a farce. None of this is true. So it's truly a horror story, and it certainly highlights the old saying that mankind is their own worst enemy. Because there are many among us who will cut your throat just so they can make $1, and they don't give a damn about any of us.
Very true.
Yes, very true.
Well, Nell had to hush for a little bit because she has some things to do, but she's still listening. She's not at the computer. So, what? Okay. When you left Canada, okay, yeah. I watched the video, so I'm asking questions that are answered in the video. But for those people who don't get a chance to listen to the video and listen to us here live first off, yes. Everybody, I keep putting the link into your YouTube channel about the cure for the Run for the Cure. Sorry,
Run from the Cure.
Run from the Cure. Sorry.
Yes. Like Canadian Cancer Society, they have Run for the Cure. The pink ribbons and their pink T-shirts and all that nonsense.
Okay.
So when we made the documentary in 2007, we called it Run from the Cure. And it was comical because when it first went up on the internet, I didn't actually think that they would leave it there, but they did. And first you seen Run from the Cure, and right below it was Run for the Cure from the Canadian Cancer Society.
There we go.
I mean, we've given these people, like the Canadian Cancer Society has taken in hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars for many, many decades. What have they given us? Absolutely nothing. And when I contacted them directly, I had the evidence to back up everything I was saying. And the letter I got back stated that they do not back the use of dietary supplements. These people are really looking for the cure now, aren't they?
Dietary supplements?
I mean, all of these foundations, organizations, the Heart and Kidney Foundations, the Lung Associations, all the rest of that. If you give these people money, you might as well take it and burn it in your stove. For that way, at least you'll get the heat from it.
Okay. So when you moved, what made you move from Canada to? Well, I'd already
been through the legal system in Canada. And, I knew how corrupted they were. When I went to court, I had 10 patients ready to testify. 2 of these patients have been cured with terminal cancer. I had 6 doctors ready to testify. I had a mountain of scientific evidence. They wouldn't let me introduce any of it. And in the end, the only way, they did convict me, but the way they did it, the Crown prosecutor in Amherst, Doug Shatford, tampered with my jury. That was brought to the judge's attention. They wouldn't do a damn thing about it. But it was almost comical because when I went to be sentenced, there were about 35 or 40 patients came that day, because they were backing me. And they put us through metal detectors. That's the first time I ever seen that in Amherst. They put us through metal detectors before we can even enter the courtroom. So, the legal eagles, they knew that we weren't in a very good mood. So, the first thing the judge came out and stated, he said, under different circumstances, Mr. Simpson would be winning awards for his work. And then he came out and stated, he said, in my 34 years in the legal system, I've never seen a case like this. There was no criminal intent. See, money was not even brought up during my court case. And then, although the same judge would not allow the patients to testify, he come right out and stated openly, and he wouldn't let the scientific evidence be introduced, but he stated openly, the scientific evidence does exist to back up everything Mr. Simpson is saying, and he also has this large body of evidence from the patients he supplied the extracts to. So I was facing 12 years in jail, and what they did, they gave me a $2,000 fine and a gun restriction. Although there was no guns involved, other than the ones that RCMP were waving around. But you see, when you're convicted of trafficking in Canada, that comes with an automatic gun restriction. I was totally sickened by what I seen. And I was ready to leave Canada, but people kept coming. They kept knocking on my door and calling me on the phone and crying, looking for help. And I just couldn't turn my back on them. So it was in late 2009, they asked me to go to the Cannabis Cup in Amsterdam to do a lecture. So I agreed, and they made me Freedom Fighter of the Year in 2009. But while I was at the event, I heard that my son called me and told me that the RCMP had raided my home again. I'd been out of Canada then for a week, but they came in and they raided my home. They said they found restricted weapons and booby traps. And they even reported that they found 70 pounds of cannabis in my home. It was all bald-faced lies. So I knew at that point, what I was doing was becoming a real thorn in the government's backside. I was getting more and more support, and they didn't like it. So I think they had the RCMP stage this raid so it would keep me out of Canada. Well, that's exactly what it did because, I'd have to be insane to go back to Canada because they just throw me in jail and I wouldn't have my medication. So I stayed in Europe, but instead of keeping quiet about it, I started traveling from country to country and I told every country in Europe what was going on here. So now it's all exposed. And
I applaud you for that. I love your energy. I love how you are outspoken. I just love it.
This is not outspoken. This is simply telling the damn truth.
Yep.
Why are we putting up with all these lies from these elected officials?
Exactly.
If we ran our own homes the way our governments run our country, we'd be broke tomorrow, for God's sakes. These people don't even, look at Canada. They're one of the biggest countries in the world with all of those natural resources,
Mm-hmm.
And we have a great big national debt. There's nobody in Canada. There's only a little over 30 million of us. You know, Pierre Elliott Trudeau, he ruined the Canadian economy back in the 1970s. And now, as far as I'm concerned, his son's there to finish the job.
Interesting. Very interesting.
Well, it's all true.
No, I know. I agree.
And look at that other idiot you just got rid of, Harper. Now then, boy, now there's an Einstein. Jesus. You know, these people are not fit to run anything. They're just criminals of the first order.
Are there any politicians that you would endorse as being open-minded and willing to listen and willing to try, or do they just give you that yes, I'm gonna, but when they get there, they just like, no, I never said that.
Yeah, that's exactly what they do. You know, well, you see, like I said before, I mean, if the governments admit this, then they got to admit their guilt. And they don't want to do that because that would bring such discredit to them that nobody would pay any attention to the governments. And I mean, I know we need some form of government. And, but today, as far as I can see, most countries are being run by these great big bureaucracies that in reality are nothing more than a criminal organization, for God's sakes, when you consider what they're making us do. You know, it just doesn't make any sense. Governments should be small. They should be streamlined. That's, you know.
And I always wonder how many politicians are really using it, but just won't say.
Hey, it's not just the politicians.
I know.
I treated police officers, the lawyers and all that. See, these people are all making good money, and if they have to, they can afford to go out and buy a pound. You know, pay $3,000 for a pound of good cannabis bud. They can afford it because they're making the money. But the average working stiff, we don't have that kind of money.
Yeah. Exactly.
You know? And since this is going to affect, you know, it would affect their livelihoods, because I swear to God, I think half the lawyers in Canada are making a living off of hemp cases. You know, I mean, when you look at the number of these cases that go through our courts, it just makes no sense whatsoever. But, you know, and doctors realize, of course, that if we all have the right to grow this plant and produce our own extracts, and we have a big jar of these extracts right in our own home, well, we're not going to have too much need for a doctor anymore. You know, I have respect for the surgical side of medicine, but the other side of medicine, the pill pushers, the oncologists, the psychiatrists, to me, it's all a fraud. None of this is real. You know, so, I mean, we do need medical people. We get in an accident. We need somebody that knows how to put us back together. But then start using the cannabis to do the healing properly instead of these damn chemicals and poisons that they're using today. You know, it's just common sense. But of course, our governments don't have any of that. And in reality, I mean, you cannot negotiate with psychopaths. I found that out the hard way. So basically, the only way I see to do this right now is literally put a gun to their heads. You know, either you do it or you die. Take your choice. Because, you know, we're suffering and dying. Canadians all across the country are suffering and dying every day who if they had access to these extracts, they could be healed. The governments are responsible. That is murder, what they're doing. So why should we, you know, treat them any differently than they treat us?
Now, you had mentioned the figure of a pound. Okay. To make, like I said, I didn't get to read the book. That's one of the things. It's one in my future plans. To make a syringe full of the extract, about how much does it take? Because, like you said, if people can just grow it, you know, in their backyard, how much would they have to grow? Do they use the whole plant? Do they just use the bud? With you know,
just the bud here. See, the bud is the most potent part of the plant, most potent medicinally. Okay. So when you're treating serious illnesses, I mean, you got people like with stage 4 cancer sitting in front of you. You need the strongest medicine possible, and you don't get that medicine from the leaves or the small buds. You have to get it right from the very best bud material. Okay. So, I mean, this is what I've always told people to do. And, I mean, the instructions are all right there on my website, phoenix-tears-the-rick-simpson. It tells you how to produce this extract properly. It tells you, you know, how to use it, the dosage instructions. It's all there. And in reality, producing this medicine is no harder than making a cup of coffee. There's nothing to it. Anybody can do it.
Yeah, I checked that out. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, but the governments right now, they're trying to have their friends in the pharmaceutical industry control this. Well, I think we've had more than enough of the manipulation from the pharmaceutical industry.
So,
And, I mean, the bottom line is, they're holding this back, but in the end, there's no holding this back. Because nobody in their right mind is going to go pay a pharmaceutical company tens of thousands of dollars for a treatment they can grow right in their own backyards. And they will not buy the pharmaceutical trash anyway, because the pharmaceutical companies are never going to supply you with an extract that would be nearly as strong as extracts you can make yourself, because they want you coming back. That's what it's all about.
yeah.
Exactly.
So I think it's time for the governments on this planet to sober up.
Okay. So so you can make what an everyday person could make would be like in that one syringe would be twice if not much more stronger than what the pharmaceutical firms would make, because yes, they want you to come back. Whereas that one syringe might cure you, if not half. Theirs would have to take like 3 or 6 or whatever just to. So yeah. No, I agree.
The protocol that I developed called for the patients to ingest 60 grams. If you've had no chemo and no radiation, if you had chemo and radiation, you're talking about ingesting 180 grams of extract then, because you have to undo all of that damage that's left behind from these horrible treatments. But if you had no chemo, no radiation, my protocol was 60 grams over 90 days. And you start with tiny doses and slowly work your way up. And usually within a month, when the patient gets up to the point where they're ingesting 1/3 of a gram every 8 hours, at that point, others around them can't even tell they're using it. Because you're not getting high from it anymore. Mm-hmm. And I also tell people in the beginning, when you start ingesting these extracts, do not drive your car. You have to wait 2 or 3 weeks until you get the feel of this medicine. And then you are perfectly safe to drive, because cannabis does not affect your motor skills. It's not like pharmaceuticals and alcohol. It does not affect your motor skills. So therefore, you can safely drive your car. As a matter of fact, in a lot of these states in the U.S., from what I understand, the ones that have legalized down there, their accident rates have gone down by about 10%. That's pretty good, isn't it? So cannabis doesn't present a danger on our roads, but I can tell you one thing, alcohol and pharmaceuticals do.
Oh, yes, they do. Oh, my goodness.
That's one of the things that I've noticed is that cannabis is illegal, yet alcohol is legal, and alcohol is the base of a lot of accidental shootings, drivings. People get drunk and get real. Yeah,
but that's okay, because look at the taxes the government's making off it. The same damn thing with cigarettes. I mean, even this thing about smoking cannabis recreationally, that's good for you. No matter what, people say, look into it. Even smoking cannabis can actually help control blood sugar. It is, and it's actually a well-proven fact that people who smoke cannabis only, after they die, when they open them up, their lungs are completely clean. In fact, they say that their lungs are even cleaner than someone who never smoked in their life.
I remember you saying that.
So they're definitely, I mean, and from what I understand too, the cancer rates are for lung cancer and things like that are much lower among cannabis smokers. And I believe it's something like, on average, cannabis smokers live about 6 years longer than those who don't. So even smoking cannabis can only be looked at as another form of preventative medicine.
Yeah.
And that's very interesting. My loved one, he had to use a lot of the, veterans doctors and everything. He had diabetes. He had diabetes, and it was brittle diabetic. It was bad. And of course she, through blood test, found out, and she called us both in, and she told him that if he did not quit smoking the cannabis, that she was going to drop him as a patient. And he had, and
that could save his life.
And, and this man had been smoking since his teen years. But he did quit because he was so afraid that she was going to drop him. Then all these other doctors would drop him. He wouldn't be able to get his insulin. And he got worse. After he quit smoking, he got worse. And
Well,
he's no
people
longer
have to
with
come
us.
to realize, like, these doctors don't know any more about medicine than we do. As a matter of fact, the people that know how to make extracts, they know a lot more about medicine than all of these doctors. You know, it's beyond belief. I mean, I used to blame the doctors, the politicians, and all the rest of them because in reality, they're supposed to be experts. They're supposed to know what they're doing. And obviously they don't. But I've come to realize that, you know, in reality, we're all at fault. You know, we've all gone along with things that we knew were insane. We never got off our asses and protested or did anything to stop these governments. We let them get away with whatever they like. But if we want to save ourselves and we want to save this planet, it's time to get off your ass and do something. You know, you better do it now because I honestly, at the rate they're killing this planet, within 15 to 20 years, I think you could see the human race go extinct. It's that bad. Fukushima, Gulf oil spills, all of this, you know, all these big poison industries everywhere, killing everything. I mean, this has got to come to an end. And we got to replace all of these industries with earth-friendly cannabis-based industries, and we can do that. You know, this is all we have to do. Start using cannabis.
Okay. When I asked you about the seeds and you said that you can order them online, I think that's hysterically funny. But so I did a little Google search and I found one. And holy moly, there are so many different, I guess, strains.
Strains.
Okay. So how do you know?
You look for the strong indica strains. Stay away from the sativas for internal use. If you're going to make a medicinal extract for internal use, look at the indica strains that are 20% THC or even more. Okay. You know, and people are always asking me, you know, what strain should I grow? Well, I mean, I can't tell you that because the problem is you take a strain, like a well-known strain. In fact, I used to grow this strain myself called White Widow. I found it to be a wonderful painkiller and it was very effective in the treatment of cancer. But if you send every seed company out there, they all sell White Widow. But if you send to 5 different seed companies and you buy the White Widow strain, when you grow them, you're going to find that you're growing 5 different types of cannabis that have different medical values. There's no stability in the seed industry. And this is something I hope to take part in the future. I plan to start my own seed company, and I want to see people supplied with these seeds at a very low price. I mean, paying 10, 20 euros for one little cannabis seed, I think is just a little bit insane.
Yes, it is. Yes.
Here's a quick seed company. I'm not going to say where or when. Canadian. It's 5 seeds per pack, $44.
Yep.
And it doesn't. It gives a name. It's called Fast Bud Outdoor Cannabis Seeds.
That's the other problem. There's thousands and thousands of different strains out there because people have done all of this crossing.
Oh, yes.
They come up with all these ridiculous names. There's even a strain out there called chemo, for God's sakes.
Yeah.
And this is really, it mixes the public up so badly. So the only thing I can tell people to do is, like I said, get a good indica strain that's over 20% THC and try to buy it, the strain from a reputable company. Like DNA Seeds, they sell LA Confidential. That's an indica. It's supposed to be up around 25% THC. I think that would be a good choice. And if you get in touch with the company that introduced these strains, there's a good chance you would get the real thing. But if you go to some other seed company and order LA Confidential, God only knows what you'd get.
Okay. I'm gonna do my research.
Yeah, there's so many strains you can't even keep up with them anymore.
I can't keep up with them.
No, and each.
And another problem too. I'm sorry I interrupted, dear. But people are contacting me every day. You know, where can I get this extract? Well, I wish I could tell them. But why do people expect me? How could they expect me to know the medical qualities of all of these different extracts that people are producing all over the planet? You know, one day they might be making a good extract. The next day they might be making it with a different strain. You know, I have no way of knowing these things, so I cannot send people to anyone. And therefore I encourage everyone to grow and produce your own. That is the most sensible solution. And if you're dying or you have a loved one that's dying and you have nothing to do with cannabis, it's not hard to find somebody that smokes cannabis. So just smokes it with you, go to the dealers and actually have them sample it. And if they start to smoke the joint and it makes them want to go lay down on the Chesterfield, that's what you need for the medicine. If it energizes them, You don't want to use that. But if it has that strong sedative, sleepy effect, that makes the best medicine.
Okay, so the sedative, sleepy effect, not the run around high munchy kind of thing. Because that's what I always said.
An extract produced from a sativa would be okay to treat skin conditions, even skin cancers and things of that nature. But
because
you know,
it would be an external.
you're not getting the energizing effect then. But when you ingest a strong sativa, I've talked to patients that actually tried to use sativa extracts.
Mm-hmm.
It interrupted their sleep patterns, and as I said, they literally bounced off the wall, and it almost scared these people to death. You know, they all thought that they were going to die. You know, so sativas are none of them did die, but I honestly think too that the sativas, if you had somebody that had a very weak heart and you gave them a sativa, an extract from sativa,
mm-hmm.
well, that could possibly bring about their death. You know, so I think the sativas actually do present a danger to some extent for internal use, but for external use, it's fine to use a sativa.
Okay. Question for a latecomer, Miss Christy, who the difference between marijuana is, and I'm finding this out, is we'll say the slang version, the slang term for cannabis and the hemp plant. So it's just hemp oil is what's made from it, and cannabis is the plant, or hemp is the plant. Marijuana is just like a name, is a slang term for it.
That's all it is.
That helps. Yeah.
Oh, I mean, they call it ganja, they call it weed, pot. I mean,
Mary Jane.
Over 400 different slang terms are used worldwide to describe this plant.
Okay.
You know, and that again, that mixes the public up.
Yeah.
You know, I get people contacting me all the time complaining. You know, well, why do you call it hemp oil? You know, I mean, all through farmers that grew this called this plant hemp. And when I produce the essential oil from that plant, well, what else would you call it? But you see, the hemp seed oil companies, the ones that, they sell in these health food stores. You can go in and buy what they call hemp oil.
Mm-hmm.
But if you turn to the back of the label, it openly states, this is cold pressed hemp seed oil. So that's what they see. It's this industry that's mislabeling their product. That's the problem. It should say hemp seed oil on the front, not hemp oil.
Okay. So, Christy in the chat room says, is the THC still in the oil? Because hemp oil is legal.
Well, there's no THC in hemp seed oil. That's the reason it's legal.
Yeah.
And, I don't, it's not that I don't have any use for hemp seed oil. It's good for cardiovascular. It does have benefits.
Okay.
But if you have a serious medical problem, you know, ingesting hemp seed oil is probably not going to help you a great deal.
Okay, so making the try this one again. Making the extract from the plant itself is what has the cure.
That's where you get the medication.
That's where the medication is from the seed, because it doesn't have the THC in it,
right?
Or not enough to make a difference. That's why it can be sent in the mail. The seed is not going to give you an oil that will give you the medicinal effect. Okay.
Well, you know, at present it's horrifying because, I mean, you look at the Canadian government and even in the Netherlands, the government there, I mean, people are producing these CBD extracts all over the place, and the governments are not giving them any problems. As a matter of fact, they're giving them the license to do this.
Okay.
But what they're trying to do, see, this is just another government deception. They're trying to focus the public's attention away from THC and have them focus on CBD.
Right.
Well, I mean, it's like I said, CBD has medical values, but if you're dying with, you know, terminal stage 4 cancer, there's a very good possibility that CBD is not going to do you much good. And I think people better become aware of that. You know, again, this is just another government scam.
Okay. Right. So the CBD, I'm trying to find exactly what the letters stand for. I'm kind of like a stickler for that.
Well, THC is tetrahydrocannabinol. CBD was, I don't know. So many of these terms I can't even remember them.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm trying to even look.
I mean, there's cannabinoids out there they don't even have a name for yet.
Right.
Okay. No, it's like I said.
I actually was fortunate enough to get some ointments. At the time, I couldn't get it. You know, like I said, here you have to have what they call a medical marijuana license.
I've been telling everybody in Canada, every time I had the opportunity, I've told everyone in Canada that has these licenses, take this license, put it in an envelope, and tell it and send it back to the Minister of Health or the Prime Minister of Canada and tell them to shove it where the sun don't shine.
Exactly.
You do not need a license to grow this plant. You do not need a license to use it. End of story.
Well, Jennifer's from the U.S., so she'll be sending it back to Mr. Trump.
Oh, well, that'll do a lot of good. I mean, I followed that American election, and Hillary Clinton and that crowd. I was glad she didn't get in. And Trump going in there, I'm going to drain the swamp. And what does he do? Look who he appointed. Jeff Sessions, a guy that has stood against cannabis for years.
Right.
And Trump puts him in control. I told the people for a long time, I said, look, the big money that runs this planet, they wanted Trump there. It was that simple. I mean, they say Trump is a billionaire, but the people that run this planet are trillionaires. If they didn't want Trump there, he wouldn't be there. So as far as I can see, I don't think that Donald Trump is going to do the United States much good.
I don't think anybody's going to be able to do much good.
It's the people. The people. They have to get up and take their freedom back, then take their countries back, and then put their, we need a government, but we need people in there we can trust. People that will represent us with an open book policy. Nothing hidden, no more backroom meetings, and no more filling your damn pockets. This is what we need. That would be good government. What we have today, these are just criminal organizations.
True. Well, you've opened my eyes to a lot, and I knew that this would happen. That's one of the reasons why I asked you to come on. And again, thank you for saying yes. Jennifer, do you have any other questions? Christy, any other questions?
I could talk about this forever. I'm just so stoked that he came on, and like I said, I'm going to share the archives with everybody. And it is, in my world, it is, more people are being very open to it. But I mean, they've got to be careful because they're risking their jobs. They're risking a lot. If they openly say, yes, I use this, I have nothing to lose. And yes, I do use it. And I was, like I said, I was very fortunate. I had someone come from Arizona, brought me a CBD ointment to use on my sciatic nerve. That worked wonders. Then I was actually turned on to the oil. I was afraid to use the oil at first. I've been a smoker for a long time, but I tried the oil. And I had them stay with me. And what it did for me, I agree. No, I wasn't going to be out there driving. But what it did for me, I was amazed. I was hooked.
Everything today, when you look at what the medical system does, I mean, you take somebody that has diabetes. They get a diabetic ulcer on their foot. And then the diabetic ulcer won't heal because they're diabetics. Yep. The medical system cannot heal a diabetic ulcer. So what they do, they sit and they wait until the gangrene sets in, and then they chop off your foot. And then chances are the gangrene will still progress, and then they chop off more of you. I mean, they can't even heal a diabetic ulcer, for Christ's sakes. And they call that medicine? I mean, I can heal a diabetic ulcer with these cannabis extracts in no time.
And that everyone, the extract would go on the outside, would go on the lesion, on the...
Yes.
And everybody that's a diabetic out there should realize this. In many cases, what I've seen with people with diabetics, many of them in a short time no longer required the use of insulin at all. The oil was taking care of their blood sugar, was keeping them spot on. It was perfect. But in some cases, you do get people that can only reduce the amount of insulin they're taking. But even if that's the case, what the cannabis extracts do for your body to undo all of that nerve damage and everything else that diabetes causes, it makes it very beneficial for any diabetic patient to use this substance. And I want people to understand, like when you're going from one strain, different strains, they'll all produce, a different amount of extract. On average, a pound, about 450 grams of high quality bud, on average will produce at least around 60 grams of extract, which is what I consider a full cancer treatment. But, some strains will give you a bit more or quite a bit more, and some strains can give you less. It just depends on the strain you're using. But if you've got good quality bud, then you should be able to get a full cancer treatment out of 1 pound. And you may even have some left over.
So 1 pound would be more than just one treatment. It would be.
It could be. It depends on the quality. I've worked with material myself that actually returned about 100 grams of oil out of a pound. So you're getting almost 2 cancer treatments out of 1 pound if you have a very, very high quality strain. But when you go out and you buy it from growers and dealers, their strains are usually not that powerful. Okay. And if you get to 60 grams, be happy. You see, I used to breed my own strains, and I had about 40 different strains of my own until the police come in. But I was a breeder, and I knew ways of making these plants much stronger. As a matter of fact, the cannabis that I used to grow was so strong that most people didn't even like to smoke it. I mean, 1 or 2 puffs and you were headed for bed. This stuff was super potent.
Hey!
And this is what I was making the medicine from.
Okay.
So, this is what's important. This is the future that I want to go. I want to get back to doing a breeding program and increase the potency of these medicinal strains to a much higher level than they already currently are. And then I want to develop my own strains, do my own process. And as I said, the way I look at it, you send me $5 and I'll send you 100 seeds. Why not? That's the way it should be.
And I think that's beautiful.
So when are you going to start your own?
This year.
Working on your strain.
There are countries now. There's 2 or 3 countries in the former Soviet Union that are looking into this very strongly. There's some countries in Africa that are doing the same. And I'll be getting projects, I believe 2 projects underway here in the very near future in Africa. And there's other countries here in Europe now. They're legalizing, medicinal use in many different countries. But the governments are still we're legalizing the medicinal use of cannabis, but they're still pushing for people to use the synthetic cannabinoids that the pharmaceutical industry is supplying. Grabinol, Marinol, things of that nature. And these synthetic cannabinoids, there is absolutely no reason for them to even exist. The reason the pharmaceutical company come up with synthetic cannabinoids is so they could patent it and they could make a lot of money. You go out and you buy Sativex from GW Pharmaceuticals, Bayer, the big drug firm Bayer, they're distributing it. Mm-hmm. Look at the cost. I had a guy come to me and he put one of these little canisters on the table. And I'd read about Sativex before. And that's back when I was still in Canada. And I looked at it and he said, "You know what that is?" And I picked it up and said Sativex. I said, "Yeah, I know what it is." And I asked him, I said, "How are you making out with this?" He said, "Well, I spray some under my tongue." And he said, "It does seem to help." I said, "Well, I'm glad to hear that." So I went in and I gave him a couple of tubes of extract. And about 2 weeks later, the same man came back to my house and he told me, he said, "Rick," he said, "I took your extracts once." He said, "The next day I threw out the Sativex." And I asked him, I said, "How much were they charging you? How much was this costing you every month to take this medication?" He said it was costing over $1,200 every month.
Damn.
This is insane. And when you look at those little canisters, there's a small amount of extract in there and the rest is a carrier. So, I would say probably Sativex is probably making about at least $1,000 a gram for every gram they put into these little canisters. It's a total ripoff.
Yes, it is.
GW Pharmaceuticals should be ashamed of themselves.
Okay. Scott in our chat room, he's in the UK. He says, here in the UK, Amazon is allowing some cannabis oil products, but they're very expensive.
And very weak.
Okay.
It's like I said, if it don't have the high THC, then I don't even consider it a cannabis extract. Okay. I do know that, CBD and things of that nature, and the CBD, that's crazy too. When you look in the U.S. at the prices some of these people are charging for CBD, you can make CBD extracts from Russian ditchweed, for God's sakes.
Exactly. Everything is so expensive. They're selling the brownies and the gummy worms and the this and that, everything, but everything is so expensive. But
you hear all
it's
these
all
other
about
things,
the money.
earwax and shatter, and
Yeah.
I had an email today from somebody. Are your extracts stronger than this wax or shatter? My extracts are both the purest medicinal substance on this planet, and probably the strongest. I have never seen anything that even begins to compare. So people have to be aware of this, and I honestly even hate doing cannabis events. I spoke at Expo Weed in Chile back in 2014. Over 30,000 people attended that event. And, Bob Marley's son was there singing. There was big,
Wow.
huge crowds. But when it came down to the medicinal use, when these lectures we did, I think that there was only about 400 to 500 people that attended the lecture. The rest of them were all walking around the grounds, getting high as a kite and thinking, that, everything is fine. Well, that's all well and good until you get sick. The problem is with cannabis events, they don't seem to take the medicinal use very seriously.
Yeah.
And, I'm really sickened by these events. And matter of fact, in most cases, I try to avoid them if at all possible.
Yeah. No, I think right now what people are looking for is the fun part of it,
Well, there's nothing wrong with it. The fun part is it better to come home in the evening and take a handful of pills or a bucket full of alcohol? Or would it might be better just to sit there and smoke a joint and relax? Jack Herer himself, the former leader, the late great Jack Herer. I love the man.
They've
Jack
got a
Herer
strain
himself,
named after him too.
Oh yeah. But Jack always openly stated, right in his 1999 documentary, he said, "I don't know what will save the world, but I do know that cannabis is the only thing that can." And Jack also stated that if everybody on this planet got up tomorrow morning and lit a joint, the world would be a much better place. And I agree.
I agree with you.
I'd have to wait till I got home.
If your children start smoking cannabis, they'll go live in your basement for the rest of their lives and they'll never do anything. This is ridiculous. Some of the most productive people I've ever met during my life were cannabis users. And look at people like Bob Malamud, Dr. Robert Malamud from the U.S. He's considered to be one of the top experts in this field. Bob started smoking cannabis when he was a teenager, about 14, I think. And now he's 69 years old now. He's still going strong. He looks like he's about 50. He looks much younger than his years. And Bob has PhDs. I've been in touch with many people like this. It didn't hinder their education, and it certainly didn't hinder their ability to work. But, there are a certain number of people that, that surround us that really don't want to do a damn thing in life. They just want to sit on their asses and have everything passed to them. Well, you can't get away from people like that. But, and the same thing with they say, well, cannabis is addictive. Well, cannabis is the same as coffee or anything of that nature. There's about 1 in 10 people have, a psychological addiction. The same ones that drink 10 cups or 20 cups of coffee a day. That is an addiction, in a certain way. But there is no physical addiction from cannabis. No addiction whatsoever. You take the extracts, you take the 60-gram treatment. I always encourage people to continue on afterwards with maintenance doses because it protects your health in so many different ways. But the minute you're up to taking a gram a day, a third of a gram every 8 hours, the next day you can stop taking it. Just walk away from it. You try that with morphine and see what happens.
Oh, Lordy,
yeah.
Or OxyContin or any of those opiates. That's the idea. That's the reason the pharmaceutical companies use this. Actually, cannabis is a far superior painkiller to opiates. I proved that myself, and even in history, it reports the same thing. So there's really no need for the use of these opiates, themselves. I don't see any reason for it. But, since they cause that addiction, then that's what the drug companies want to use because that's going to keep you coming back.
Yeah, that's what I had a doctor, and that's why I was adamant I was going to find another one. Constantly, prescribing these drugs, and I'm like, I'm not going to take that. Don't even prescribe it. And like I said, I was very fortunate, found a doctor, a female doctor. I was very honest and open with her. And I just told her, this is how I do it, and this is what I continue to do. If you don't want to treat me, see me anymore, because, I do have other issues that I need to be dealt with. But if you don't want to be my doctor because of it, I'll have to find. And I was in shock. She totally agreed with me and stood behind me. She says, this obviously is working for you, and I'm behind you 100%.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. But the sad truth is, I mean, when you look at the vast number of drug addicts there are on this planet, a very high percentage of them got that way because of their doctors.
Yes.
Look at all these soldiers that are returning from Afghanistan and places like that. The first thing they do, I mean, they've had their shots and vaccinations, which I'm surprised didn't kill them in the first place. But when they get back to their home countries, well, then they got to go to the medical system, and the doctors put them on the opiates. Well, okay, you're taking opiates, and well, it would help to some degree, I guess, but you become a drug addict. And then when you become a drug addict, then the doctors will no longer treat you. Although they're the ones who caused it.
Yes.
It's beyond belief.
Very true. And I am, yeah, we need to, I like it. I'm going to be shouting this from the rooftops. I'm going to be sharing this, up the.
Oh, me too.
The Mississippi. And when you do have your strain and you're working with it, you let me know, please. I will share it. We're going to keep in contact.
The whole world will know, dear, very quickly, believe me.
Okay. We're going to keep in contact, and we'll have you back on if you're willing when your store is up and running, and we'll talk, because I'm interested in my children are going to have a fit. I'm interested in learning about the growing aspect and how you choose the different strands and strains and stuff. But that's
the best advice I can give you there. There's a gentleman named Jorge Cervantes, and he has a book out on growing cannabis called the Indoor-Outdoor Medicinal Grower's Bible. It's about 500 pages, but if you get that book and you read it and practice what that book tells you, then you become an expert grower in no time.
Jorge Cervantes. Okay.
Jorge Cervantes, the Indoor-Outdoor Medicinal Grower's Bible. And there's also Ed Rosenthal. There's many people like that have good books out there in this subject, but I particularly like that book by Cervantes.
Indoor-Outdoor
Medicinal Grower's Bible.
I will find it, and for those who are interested, I will also put the link into the comments of this show. And if not, it'll definitely go on my Facebook page, because I don't care what anybody thinks.
Well, this is a comedy to me. I mean, I'm 67 years old now. And do you think I'm going to let some young pup walk up in my face and tell me that I can't smoke a joint? Who the hell do these people think they are?
That's awesome.
It's time for them to grow up.
Mm-hmm.
I feel the same. Truly do.
But like you said, this is an eye-opening show for me. I have always been very 100% for medicinal use of. For those who want to, smoke it for pleasure, for fun, it's great. Go have at it. But for me, my first step was the medicinal effects of it. I don't want people to be in pain.
Right.
You'll find out I'm the very happy type. Everything's got to be on the good side. I know there's bad sides, and I get it, but I want people not to have pain, not to emotional, physical, mental. It's a pain. We don't need that. But there's enough shit. Excuse my language. There's enough shit going on out there in the world. If it takes buying a couple of pounds of this stuff and making the extract to make sure that somebody is relieved from pain, whether it's from Nell, who has fibromyalgia, and I know a few other people who have it, then yeah, I look into things, and if I can do it, I can share it, I will. If I can get it and share it, I will.
It's a nerve of these governments today. Like, I don't know if you're aware of Shauna Banda, but Shauna is a lady from Kansas, and quite a few years ago, she was dying from Crohn's. I mean, this woman had been operated on over and over again. She was a young mother, and I mean, she was at the stage where she was on her deathbed. She heard about the extract, so she started producing her own extract, and she used it, and it brought her back to a decent state of health. And one of her children was in school one day, and they were talking about cannabis. As usual, the educational system were telling a pack of lies. So Shauna's son got up and set them straight. The very next day, they were at Shauna's door, and now she's going through the legal system in Kansas. Now, I don't know how damn backwards the legal system in that state is, but, I mean, you're taking a woman who had gone through the medical system and who had turned to cannabis, and it saved her life, and now you want to put her in jail because of it? What kind of state is Kansas? And I've seen this over and over. I mean, I had a local police officer from Spring Hill. He came to me one time. His daughter, same thing. She had been suffering with Crohn's for, and I think it was 9 years. She got it when she was 12 years old. She was 21 then. And he told me, he said, I don't think she's going to live another year. And he knew me anyway. We knew each other for 30 years. And he said, Rick, does this substance really work? And I looked at him and I said, do you actually think I'd be doing this if it didn't? Now, what's wrong with you? So I gave him 1 6-gram tube, 6 grams of high quality extract. 6 weeks later, he came back and knocked on my door, and he had his head down, and he was shaking his head, and then he looked at me and he said, Rick, 1 tube. He said, she no longer has Crohn's. But you see, even a lot of police officers know the truth, but the trouble is, if they go back to their police departments and start speaking that truth, well, guess what? Suddenly they're unemployed.
Very much so.
Yes.
Because there's so many people out there that know better. All of these idiots they're just regurgitating the lies and deceptions that they were told. Yeah. Do the simple research the same as I did, and you will find, then you'll find out the real truth. And then you'll become an activist the same as we are, because, this has to come to an end.
Well, as I said, you have given me a lot of information, and I know that there will be a lot of people asking a lot of questions. Sorry. And if they're not, I'm going to be poking them going, that, and, because I'm kind of insistent that way. A lot of people know me in the chat room. They'll be like, I'm a nice pain in the ass, because I get to do what I want to do, and I get people to listen. And
well, approach it this way, dear. I mean, the bottom line is, you can lead a horse to water, but it's up to the horse whether they drink or not.
Oh, I'll put lots of water in front of them. Stick them in the middle of the daggone lake.
Yeah, I put a lot of water in front of them too, but even then, some people just won't listen. I've always said that about 10% of the population will accept this very rapidly, and there's about another probably 40% that if I spend 3 or 4 hours explaining it, then they'll accept it. But about 50% of the population, you could hit them over the head with a 2x4. They still not would accept this. Yeah. They want to believe in their system. And they're afraid of the change, and they're afraid to learn the real truth. Because I don't know, I think a lot of people just couldn't live with that truth. Yeah. When you realize that your own government's been killing you and your family members for all of these decades, and you're supposed to trust them? I don't think so.
Yeah, I have found, though, being more open about it, and now there are more people my age and older that are being very open, and they were like, where was this so many years ago? And they quit taking the pharmaceutical drugs. Oh yeah, and it's just amazing, and they're, like they said, their results are, they just can't believe the, good results that they are getting.
Well, see, people think if this was all true, they'd be seeing it on their TVs. But, what people don't understand is the rich elite who control this planet also control the mainstream media. Yes. I mean, CNN has known about me since 2004, for God's sakes. What have they done? They know about this, but they won't talk about it, because it's not good for the big business. And, I look at the mainstream media with disgust. Going out, I've done hundreds of shows like this, and this is where you get the message to the people. As far as I'm concerned, I don't care if the mainstream media ever mentions my name, because I have no use for them. And I'm just like Donald Trump on that one. The fake news. because that's what they're all about anyway. I wouldn't, I shut off my TV in 2003, and it's the smartest thing I ever did. And I stopped reading newspapers. The simple truth is, when you look at these stories that, they put on the news, or you'll see in the newspapers, if you take what they're saying and turn it right around backwards, you'll find out that you're a lot closer to the truth. It's just propaganda and lies.
I'm still looking.
Yeah, I don't watch the news or read the paper either. Haven't for a long time.
Scott in the chat room says, same here in the UK. More folks are taking medicinally. Unfortunately, more and more police drug busts and stings to arrest the growers. The only winners are the drug dealers and big pharma. Lots of Brits getting criminal records which affect their everyday life.
Yes.
Well, there's a way to fight that. Just shut off the BBC. The Daily Mirror and all these other, publications in England that stand so, radically against the use of cannabis. Stop buying their damn newspapers and stop watching their shows. The message will get through.
Yep. Well, we're about up on time, which is kind of like sad because
wow,
it went by so quickly.
Yes, it did. Too quick.
And, yeah, but first off, thank you, Jennifer, for co-hosting. And I know you do it. You do it because you love me and because you have no choice. Thank you, Rick, and thank you, Daniela. I know you're going to listen back, and I'm sure. But Rick's got an awesome wife who put us together and said, yes, do this. And she helped us out, get him online so we could actually do this because I made a few boo-boos in the beginning. You know me, technical support.
Thank you so much, Rick. This has me so stoked. I've been talking to Darlene about medicinal for a long time.
About it, and I just said one day, you know what? Let me send Rick an email and see what we can get. And Daniela responded going, let's do it.
Well, my message to the public is simply, look, come together. If we want to make a world that's decent for our children and their children to live in, it's up to us to make that world.
Yep.
And if we get together, we can make this whole planet a better place for us all. We just got to start using common sense, and we have to get rid of all this damn corruption. So, this is the goal that I want to achieve, and I almost feel in some ways that I've already achieved my goal because, so many people now know the truth about this. But I want to perfect this medicine to its highest healing levels, and I want to see, the extracts, I would like to see people be able to purchase these extracts at a decent price. As far as I'm concerned, if they turn me loose, I can make a full cancer treatment for $100. But if these investors or people that get into this business, even if they would sell it for $10 a gram, $600 for a full cancer treatment, I would have no complaints. But the damn problem is today, it seems everybody that gets into this, they all want to make $50, $70, $100 or more a gram. And this is just highway robbery.
Okay.
So, the only solution for this is for us to get together, grow our own, and tell the governments where to get off.
Very true. Well, I thank you very much. I will see everybody again tomorrow night. We have another show on the usual time and place. But would love to have you back if people are interested and we have more questions. I'll send Danielle an email and we'll work on it. And now that you know how to do it, it'll be like simple to come in and join us anytime, by the way.
Okay, dear. I'd be happy to comply.
All right. Thank you, sweetheart. Thank you, everybody in the chat room for coming in and hanging with us. And we will see you very, very soon. Much love.
Bless you all.
Night-night.